Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, December 20th. Let's hop in. So I was supposed to, or I had planned to at least, work on my macro and schedule things, but instead, for the accountability section today, I will say I've been playing Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition, going very hard on it. Now there is definitely some differences in my experience of playing Fallout 3 now versus playing it when it came out or near when it came out on the Xbox 360 originally. First of all, there's a shocking lack of breadcrumbing for one reason or not other. Either it's because I have kind of just refused to go through the main storyline, or it's because I have turned off the radio, because like as soon as I walked out of the vault and got that first radio signal, I turned it off and never listened to it. Whereas I feel like if I did have the radio on, I would be given more places on the map that I could go and investigate, maybe even with some more guidance as to places where I'd actually get quests. I've been playing probably now for somewhere around 13-14 hours, and I've accomplished like 6 quests. And I have gone to a lot of places and gone into places and just killed people and cleared it out, playing it on very easy, which very easy arguably should not exist. It's too easy for its own good. I'm running into super mutants and I can take them out with certainty. I'm getting into regions and areas I definitely should have more struggle at level 7. It is weird also that the game kind of caps out with the DLC at level 30, when really you would expect you would get up to a level 100. There's a considerable lack of random people or just anything at all in between points of interest in the wasteland. Its color palette is also incredibly ugly, just awful. It's just brown on brown on brown, or gray on gray on gray. It's mostly gray, I think, more than brown. Yeah, it's almost all gray, not brown. But yeah, I have gone into at least 3 or 4 different locations and cleared out an area, not having a quest, not finding a quest when I enter the area, not finding a quest when I leave the area. There's usually a comic book that you can read that will increase your stats in Fallout 3 that you'll find in an area. Maybe if you're lucky, there you can find a bobblehead, but the bobbleheads are actually fairly extremely rare. It definitely feels like there's a disconnect between the people who made the mainline story quest areas and everybody else, and then there's also a division between people who would make one specific dungeon versus another dungeon. I managed to go into one dungeon and clear it out, just killing all the murlocs, which are supposed to be pretty difficult to fight, and on very easy they're not. So I just killed everybody in there. Then I got a quest to go back to that dungeon and plant a scanner, and a optional bonus if I didn't harm any murlocs when I went in there, which was incredibly easy because they were all dead. Like, clearly the experience there was supposed to be that I was supposed to use an item called a stealth boy to turn me invisible and use my stealth ability to sneak in, and they were trying to make it like stealth is a real thing in Fallout 3 when it really isn't. In the same way that barter is not really a thing and speech is not really a thing, even though you do get these like speech checks, the number of speech checks that you're likely to actually succeed at in any playthrough is going to be so low, and it's going to give you such a small amount of XP. The game literally never gives you XP for anything. It's just insanity on top of insanity. So we've got the Winter Cup to play today, I guess. Forestcraft and Dragoncraft again. I don't even know if that would matter. Yeah, I was like in the middle of this Grand Prix, and apparently if you wait a few days and you're in the middle of a Grand Prix, it still just continues. Interesting. I would have thought after 24 hours it would have just said, alright, you forfeit the remaining matches. The variety of creatures in Fallout 3 is good. But the variety of how you fight those creatures is just awful. Like, there's no different feeling in how they attack or what threat they pose or what stats an enemy might have or what stats you might need to help you fight somebody, between any of the different characters. You don't run into humans enough, and humans are really just the only interesting people to fight. Like, you kind of know super mutants would have like a ton of endurance and health and would just take a ton of damage, but then Murlocs are kind of exactly the same. The only difference is Murlocs' faces are more shielded effectively, so the chance of hitting them in the face and getting criticals is lower. That being said, you can't play the game outside of VATS anyways. Like, there's just no way. You waste all of your bullets. Even using VATS almost 100% of the time, I'm running low on bullets. And what I imagine you would have recognized or should have recognized is, in compared to like Borderlands, which Borderlands did come out after Fallout 3, so they really did optimize it in a way to make it more of an action game, and Fallout 3 was already a huge step away from the actions of Fallout 1 and 2, which was more tabletop Dungeons and Dragons style RPG. But yeah, Borderlands just gives you 3 guns, and there's maybe 5 or 6 guns classes, but or I think you can actually have 4 guns in your main loadout. Whereas there is probably, I would say, 7 or 8 different weapons classes in Fallout 3, and they all take weight, and weight certainly is one of the main problems of the game that needs to be addressed. Like, even for your first gameplay, it feels like you probably should just cheat and get rid of the weight limitations so you can just carry as much junk as possible. I did find out in this playthrough something I didn't even learn when I first played Fallout 3, which kind of highlights how Fallout 3 fails to really tutorialize the player and explain all the systems, which it has far too many systems to explain. But I didn't even know the idea of repair. I'm not sure I repaired a single thing when I first played the game. And I don't feel like my experience is particularly unique in that either, because
what you want. This conflict ends now.
Fallout 3 is effectively abandoning its original player base when it was acquired by ZeniMax and Bethesda. It was abandoning the Fallout 1 and 2 top-down Dungeons and Dragons players for a more action 3D environment. Arguably, Fallout 3 is not too different from Fallout 1 in a lot of ways. It just looks a lot prettier and has 3D around it, which was the right way to go. But should I evolve an attack here? But yeah, if there was less of a concern of weight and less junk in general, there is just an insane amount of items, and so far in my playthrough, the second time, it seems like scrap metal is really the only miscellaneous item that you want to hold on to, but I think I remember correctly that you want to hold on to pre-war money and pre-war books a lot also, and you could hold on to sugar bombs to get more caps. There is part of the reason why barter doesn't make any sense is there's I still really have only found Megaton as a major city with actual shops in it, and those shopkeepers don't have enough currency to really trade for anything anyways.
I hope you're ready
So,
to escort me.
So the entire economic system is failed as it is depicted. It kind of, and maybe Fallout 4 addresses this a little bit better. It feels like what you should be able to do is mark a lot of things on the map when you can't mark anything on the map right now, but or ever in Fallout 3. But it would make a lot of sense if you could set up trade caravans and tell somebody that you hired to go to a specific person to trade the scrap metal. That way you get the best rate of return on it versus just going to random shopkeepers and getting a very low rate of return. But yeah, I don't know if it matters
Do not seek what is not
particularly one way or the other, because I'm only maybe 13 hours into the game, on the verge of just completely destroying the economy. I would say it feels like the perk system and the special system is not balanced enough that you can easily get everything to the maximum if you want to play from that perspective of having a maximum
Too late.
So you have
Everything.
chosen.
Ever seen a dragon on ice before?
You've been chosen.
But yeah, it definitely feels also in Fallout 3 like, since the wasteland is mostly there just to hide loading pop-in, you could probably shrink down the map quite a bit, have a lot more things close together, put a lot more random enemies. You could reduce the health of every enemy by a third and have triple the number of enemies, and it would be a better experience.
Could manage this.
You've been chosen.
But yeah, if you're not gonna reduce the just empty space and the scale of things, which the scale definitely feels weird, because things in the distance look very big or look very small, and then you walk a little bit and they get bigger, so it's like you're looking at everything through a magnifying lens. But if you weren't gonna do that, you could also go the route of just having a augmented
There's a lot more where that came from.
abridged mod is what I'm trying to say there. If each city just kind of had an invisible wall around it, and when you walked out of the city, it just asked you, where do you want to fast travel, and then popped you up to the main menu and fast travel to the next city. That would be fine. You'd have to kind of rethink conversations and the people in the cities. Most cities and areas of interest don't have anybody that talk to you, but that kind of needs to be rethinked anyways. Honestly, you could probably make a mod that would just linearly tell you the entire story of Fallout 3 and make it a much quicker experience too. It's very easy to get into Megaton and spend an hour playing a very different game than when you're out in the outskirts or in the dungeon shooting everything on sight. Let's see.
Kindness, strength, just like Mr. Dragon.
Enemy or amulet.
Ready to witness my true strength?
As long as we're together, like this.
Right. I have to do it this way.
Sown has been reaped.
Yeah, arguably, I think you could, before you even think about making a Fallout 5, I think you should consider moving over to either the Unreal Engine. Almost certainly is the engine to use here, but moving into the
The resplendent phoenix graces you with her presence.
let's see.
You don't know when to quit. It's too late for everything.
Also, yeah, before you think about making a Fallout 5, I would think Microsoft should make Bethesda take the Unreal Engine, remake Fallout 1, make that probably a little bit more of a linear thing. One of the things you can certainly do and should be happening in Fallout 3 is when I kill somebody that's a bad guy, there should be a percentage chance that I find a piece of a map that shows me a new area and tries to breadcrumb me to that area. But it really doesn't work that way, so like I'm not finding new areas, and the one quest I've started that was a very basic starter quest of which there seems to be about only 3 outside of the main story.
Let the games begin.
That main quest told me to go to 3 different locations looking for a group of bad guys, and I went to each of the 3 different locations. In one of the locations there's a gate I can't open that requires a key. You can't lockpick it or anything, which that's weird gatekeeping, literal gatekeeping. And so I searched those 3 locations, didn't find any hint of any of them. And it's just like, okay, so you gave me 3 dungeons and a mystery. Now what am I supposed to do? Wander around and ask around? Or am I supposed to go back to the first location and just say I can't find him? Like, that seems very weird. Very weird indeed. Like, I would say Fallout 3 does a worse job than Skyrim does. Like,
This one's for my family.
so I kind of have to check whether Skyrim or Fallout 3 came out first. But while Skyrim still does have a ridiculous amount of garbage in it, the wandering random boss fights of dungeons are of dragons are for the most part completely missing in Fallout 3. There's let's see. Fallout 3 versus Skyrim. Alright. Let's see. It's about 50-50. There definitely are some problems with Skyrim, in particular. In the fact that you're fighting a lot of Draugrs. Man, I am just not being able to make a complete sentence. Alright. Fallout 3 was 2008. Skyrim was 2011. So yeah. Ideally, I would want to see some major improvements in Fallout 4 that took the improvements to Skyrim more to heart.
Walter, Ranger of the Forest! At your service. Pipe down!
So yeah, Skyrim does a lot more with its skill system, with its user interface. It fails kind of in the variety of enemies. I think the dungeons are bigger and better in Skyrim. Honestly, I kind of like the Fallout visual aesthetic more than Skyrim. But the story and the overarching story, I think, is a little bit better in Skyrim. The color palette is definitely better in Skyrim. So yeah, it definitely feels like for at least 60% of their methods, it kind of falls back. Let's see. So fuse with a fairy, just one fairy. That's not a bad move. 3 turns, it's gonna do this.
Dance with me! Hey, let's play!
But yeah, I think they should probably remake Fallout 1. Make it a more linear abridged thing. It doesn't have to be super linear, but some of it definitely should be more linear, where you just lock yourself into a main story quest, and that is that. There, in Fallout 3, does seem like a lot of times where you may accidentally go through a dungeon and clear things out, and the system should be better to just recognize that and tell the game that you've already accomplished the quest. But any of my complaints in particular kind of fall apart also when I know reception for Fallout 4 was not amazingly enthusiastic. And I don't think there really was anything wrong with Fallout 4. I just think they spend too much time working on these games, and it just doesn't satisfy because the hype is too big already. And so I wonder when Starlink comes out if we're not going to run into that exact same issue where in a lot of ways the game is going to have the same whatever systems you see in either Fallout 76 or Fallout 4. You're only going to see maybe minuscule improvements of that. You may not even see systems as good as Fallout 4 because Skyrim's been in development so long. I mean, Starlink has been in development so long. I wouldn't be surprised if it is if it becomes a major disappointment for that reason alone. Do this. Do this. Do this.
I won't let you get away.
The dance hall awaits. Dance with me. Hey, let's play.
Oops, I shouldn't have played that fairy.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
And Starlink may very well be just far too close to home as far as a game, because it's not in that weird alternate universe where there was all-out nuclear war, such as Fallout, and it's not in the weird Elder Scrolls universe where magic and dragons exist. So we may very well find that Starlink is literally just a few thousand years ahead or a few hundred years ahead of current time, and it might be very boring. You might see very boring weapons, very boring items, unless we're landing on a lot of planets that just go in a very sci-fi direction. That there may not just be that much going on. Okay. Amulet leaves play. Two damage to the leader.
Let's go to the ends of the earth.
Hey, let's play.
There's no one else I'd rather lose to. Looks like I won.
In another thought, Starlink may very well be the ultimate evolution of Fallout 3 or Skyrim, in that all of those games have fairly large empty spaces in between each location, and if you have like light years of empty space in between area to area, and you're just jumping from one planet to another, that might be it. But planets have a danger of feeling really small at that point too. But it's kind of pointless to even speculate. We have a ton of news to cover, or not really news. In fact, videogamedeveloper.com, for instance, hasn't put out anything over the weekend at all. They have this best of 2021 top 10 games of the year feature that they just put out, which, I mean, we can look at their opinion there and take it as an opinion, and like most opinion, just kind of ignore it. A lot of hype for It Takes Two, I think more. Loop Hero is like free right now in the Epic Game Store. I have totally dropped the ball as far as getting those free games every day from the Epic Game Store. I should get Loop Hero. I should be, like, theoretically playing Loop Hero right now, but I still kind of would want that on Steam. Fallout 3 also does not have any achievements. They did patch out the games for Windows Live, but I will also say it's still incredibly crashy, and so I've had it crash 3 or 4 times, so you do need it to autosave quite a bit, and you probably need to save quite a bit yourself if you start to see any incorrect frame pacing. I don't even know this one, Wild Myth. But yeah, there's the visuals. Once I changed the visuals, or just how I set them up when I launched from the PC launcher, made the characters look incredibly dark. Like, the contrast was just wrong for them, and I had to use the GeForce experience to adjust it, which, I mean, if you don't have a GeForce video card, or you don't have GeForce experience installed, it does kind of feel like you are going to run into a situation where your graphics may look pretty bad, and you may have to go into like weird internal settings to try and get the graphics to look good. And even with the GeForce experience settings, there still is this probably unintentional, but maybe intentional situation where
Let's play.
let's attack here. This guy. Then return this guy to do 3. I've lost my train of thought here, man. I'm staying up too long trying to play games, trying to make footage. In one of the crashes, I found that the version of OBS I'm using actually tried to re-encode the wrong MKV and remuxed the wrong MKV, and so it took an old backup video file I had and labeled it and dated it as the new video file, and that was very confusing to find a Batman Telltale series episode dated days after I had stopped playing Batman Telltale. But yeah, I was able to eventually figure it out.
Walter, Ranger of the Forest, at your service.
Hey, let's play.
Evolve.
Pipe down.
It's really not Shouldn't have done that. I've got new mugs, and I think they may be a little bit more rattly with ice in them.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Stop it.
Anyways, I guess we'll just cover the news. We have a ton of games that we had left over from Friday, not actual news. Cyan says, and it said an hour ago, opening ceremonies for Mist Online Uru Live Again's new content will begin in an hour. I don't think Mist Online Uru Live Again at this point is being run by Cyan at all. I think it is fully a fan project. This does look like a new area for Mist Online Uru. But I would probably need to do more research as to how that would really play, and yeah, it's kind of more of a fan project, I think, more than anything else. Let's see. Yeah, here's their website. There's no Moolah, as they shortened it down to. Let's play here.
You want to hunt? Be my guest. The hunt has only begun. That beast is my savior.
That was a mistake. Anyways, it's a it's a free-to-play thing. You create an account. It's on the base of Uru that's available on Steam, but they're gonna try and add more content and grow it and bring it back to being that MMO concept that they were so ambitiously wanted it to be about. Right now they don't really have any screenshots of anything new to show, it seems. Let's see. This apparently would... Seems like all these forums are read-only. Which probably means they moved everything over to Moolah again. That's also archived. So kind of read-only. Wow. So it seems like this entire forum is either locked until you log in, and that's what they mean by read-only. Like, or there's been a lot of middle work here, or effort to bring it back to life from being dead. Which honestly, this would be about the 6th or 7th time that Mist Online has tried to succeed, and I just don't think it ever would really succeed. Very few MMOs succeed in the first place, and then Mist Online Uru Live is not around your standard fantasy hack and slash killing of people, nor is it around bartering of any kind. It is very much around just a wanderlust concept and puzzle solving concepts, and it's just takes too much time and too much effort to make puzzles. You even see that in the real world, that the hands craftsmen out there that are making puzzle boxes are making just a few of them and selling them at such a high premium price that just is not it's just not something that can be commoditized very well. Well, I think the game did me a favor there by just ending that arena run. Like, what they should have done, and it's stupid to say this, and it really just smacks in the idea of what a Myst game should be, is they should have introduced the idea of a war, which there were wars in the past, in the history of the Myst universe. There should have been just a war going on, and people should have just been shooting each other, running and gunning in that environment. Maybe you could try to put in some randomized puzzles and locks that would open up secret passages. Maybe you could try to create some puzzles or locks that would you'd have to race to finish for one team versus another. But I think just playing towards the familiar of running and gunning would make a lot of sense. Or you could just have a lot of rats running around, frankly. You could have just had monsters in dungeons that gave you some of that grindy nature of gameplay to give you a little bit more to do. I mean, none of that really is going to satisfy a true Myst fan who wants to just read books and solve puzzles, but a true Myst fan probably doesn't want to play an online MMO anyways. Yeah. In a lot of ways, Myst Online is an example of where Cyan has dropped the ball. They could have easily been a Bethesda, a Microsoft, as far as video games were concerned, had they just been more willing to pivot and make different types of games, kind of not always focus on Myst, grow in different directions. But they became victims of their own success, obviously. I'm opening a lot of packs today. Moving on with the news, because I want to kind of rush through this. GTA Trilogy Remastered PC owners have been offered a free Rockstar Games. The title current availables includes GTA 5, 4, Max Payne 3, LA Noire, and Bully, which arguably you should probably just give all of those games for the 3 different games available. I don't know how that specifically works. It is probably somewhat smart to get Bully if you've never played Bully, but yeah. Because there's a thought, at least, that Bully 2 is back in development. It's been claimed. Alright, back to another arena run.
Ready for action.
doing the setup for 3 of these in a row, you can definitely feel how time consuming this setup is. Really feels like there should just be a pick random button. Apparently Red Hat Linux donated $10,000 to the Open Broadcast Software project, which, okay, that's nice.
This one's for
Hopefully
my
that
family.
doesn't the beginning of Red Hat Linux potentially trying to buy OBS or anything like that, but I doubt it. Video Games Chronicles has an article saying Nintendo is very excited about 2022 and Zelda is likely on track. Which, okay, good. What else are we really expecting from 2022 as far as games from Nintendo? I'm not really sure if there's anything else we can think of. Yeah, of course, if the Metroid Prime game comes out, that would be fine. I think Bayonetta 3 already came out. If not, it's slipped my mind. I doubt we'll see a Mario Odyssey in 22 or another Mario game. We'll probably get something, but we're not going to get a Smash Brothers. We may get a Splatoon 2 or 3. I'd say there's a good chance of that one.
Darkness is lit by
Too
truth.
slow.
But yeah, we are also in kind of in more traditional times. We are in like the 4th or 5th year in which the Switch has existed. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo is definitely thinking more along the lines of what are we going to develop for the theoretical Switch 2, and let's just let our third-party sellers worry about selling games on the Switch 1.
May the dark clouds be dispersed.
Or at least I imagine that's what they were thinking before the pandemic. Now, it may very well be that they've had to reevaluate things. We got a ton of games on Steam, so Ball Run 3D Maze, Marble Maze Speedrun. This is the first marble game I've seen that actually looks like it might start to get the idea of what a marble contraption should look like in a 3D environment. I don't know if this is anywhere close to a real finished product, but it's a lot closer, and this is probably a lot closer than any like Marble Madness clone that we've seen. Yeah, nobody's really tried to make a good Marble Madness clone since the original Marble Madness, really. Arguably that's because the original Marble Madness just proved that it wasn't a particularly good game. It may have been a slightly better game. Marble Madness may have been a slightly better game in arcades because of the fact that you were actually controlling a marble or mouse ball.
Beloved spear.
Too slow.
But very few people are going to have a giant ball input. I guess technically I do have one, but yeah,
You keep relying on you, Dragon.
that I wouldn't use it when reviewing a game, because me having kind of specialized equipment does not give a normal useful review to a game. That's why I play everything with an Xbox Core controller, just very basic controllers. I could obviously buy a $100 like Xbox Elite controller,
Take a break.
or probably more than $100, but that wouldn't be something most people did. Next we have Planetarium VR. I gave that previous game a follow. I'm being kind of generous. I won't be as generous to this. This looks pretty awful. VR, $5.39. Now, arguably, planetariums in themselves aren't worth their cost and the size that they take up. But yeah, even in the real world, the VR version of it looks awful. Here we have a game called He Will Shoot, which seems like it's a zombie first-person shooter or third-person shooter, maybe with some car driving. See, the problem here is I could just call this an asset flip zombie shooting game or asset flip third-person shooter, but it looks polished enough that it looks good. The thing that loses me is the fact that it's $1.59. That seems crazy. It's single player only. So yeah, I would say it definitely is an asset flip game. Or at least it seems like that.
The dawn shines like a beacon of hope.
But
March on!
Dawn always
we have hit once again a point where
dawn is a blessed sunrise. I have done the God's bidding.
we've hit that point again where asset flips start to look pretty good. So that then leaves very little excuse for something like Cut Grass here, which seems like it's a lawn mowing / puzzle game where you maybe only go in straight lines unless you hit an arrow and you're trying to make a specific pattern. But even if that were the case,
It won't be long now.
I don't see how you could actually make this pattern
Dawn.
with this setup. 64 cents English only. I think we'll say no to that. Board Breaker looks bad visually as far as graphics. Looks like MS Paint level graphics. $3.99 English only. Fish Love Danger looks like nothing that would interest me. Half Flappy Bird, half just avoidance swimming game. $1.19 English only. Let's come over here and play. Let's follow this attack.
I present you a gift from my lord.
Next we have a game on Steam here called The Forgotten Empire, which looks like another one of these RPG games where it's mostly selling on scantily clad characters. I know one visual novel specifically has opted, and it's probably the same company over and over again. This game is $8.49 English only, and I don't say anything special about it. They have opted to have more of a censored version come out on the Steam version. Either Valve / Steam has created a confidentiality contract that is very airtight, and nobody's willing to even hint that censorship is being told to them, or the companies themselves have just assumed that to be the case and have decided to make splits, different versions of different games. I think there definitely is at least one company that is intentionally making more of a censored version on Steam to drive traffic to their own shop, which you would expect to see some of that happening.
All right, troops, get ready for war.
Well, I will say my eyes have stopped really making any problems, although maybe now I've had a couple times where I've felt a little nauseous. I think Fallout 3 kind of makes me a little motion sick in particular, but yeah, I think I'm also just not eating right or enough and not sleeping enough. And so maybe my eyes are leading to the nausea too, but I don't think so. So if it's not one thing, it's another.
My secret technique. 10,000 espadas.
Okay.
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
Let's see if we can do anything here.
Prepare yourself.
Now you've done it.
Next we have a game on Steam called Final Exit. I think we can say no to this immediately when you look at this generic thumbnail and this low effort looking game. Early access, $6.99, way too expensive. Actually claims to be English only. Next we have another JRPG called Aplistia Retold, which doesn't look like anything. Like, yeah, at a certain point here, I might just want to stop playing Shadowverse completely, and let's just possibly try and have a stream just covering news. Here we have Epic Tower for Tireless Lovers. I kind of like this art style, but I don't know what kind of game this really is. If it's a tiny tower simulation or what. It's not. It's a tower defense game where you're creating kind of a shoots and ladders experience. I'd like to see this actually play. See how this actually plays out. It's kind of a cruel comedic contrivance, certainly, is that you're making these cartoony traps over and over again. Although it does kind of have that Dungeon Keeper vibe to it also. It's English and French. It's free. It's single player only. I don't understand. I don't understand these games when they come out like this. It's like, it feels like this was a student project or something, but like the only thing you would think is that this developer would have something else to sell, but instead they just have another free-to-play game here. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll put this on the follow list. But generally, I don't need to give consumer advice for a free game, do I? Just check it out yourself. Next, we have something called Codebreaker, parentheses, which looks like it's half puzzle, half visual novel of no interest. $9.99, English only. Here we have a game called Another Day in Paradise, which is tagged as a psychological horror game. The visuals look a little rough. I kind of expect it to be kind of an adventure game. there might be a game here beyond the rough 3D models, or this might just be trickery. $14.99 English, Spain, Spanish, full audio in Spain, Spanish. So might be very interesting. Very usually you don't. I don't know of another game that has Spain, Spanish only as the full audio. And that's an interesting thought, to potentially have some sit through a game where the characters would be speaking in Spanish. My Spanish is very, very poor, so I probably wouldn't understand the vast majority of what is being said. But I think I would get tonation and understand a little bit of it. There should probably be more games that do have Spanish audio dialogue. There's a lot of Spanish speaking countries, but they tend to be somewhat poor or not have a big PC gaming or gaming community. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of people in the United States, a lot of kids that take Spanish as a second language, and if there were more video games that potentially let people practice their Spanish, that would be interesting. Very often, when you have fully voice-acted English games, they don't embrace Spanish. Now, in all fairness, it is worth mentioning that English as a second language is the most common second language. So it's fairly safe to make your game only support English, and then move over to some other language like Chinese or Japanese instead, or your native language. And I guess there's probably just not like video game developers in Spanish speaking countries either that have had massive successes.
Guns can be kind of finicky.
Here we have a game called Plinko Panic, which kind of feels like a pachinko game with roguelike elements and fights. Yeah, Plinko is kind of not even the right term. It only has 12 levels, and for that reason alone, I'm going to say no. $5.94 English, allegedly full audio is way too expensive. We have Medieval Trader Simulator. We can see it's already mixed reviewed, and obviously that wouldn't be particularly that interesting. In a funny way, like, it's kind of a statement that this looks slightly better than Skyrim does, and now just any asset flipper can basically do the same thing. In a lot of ways, I guess Bethesda has a lot of blame that they deserve for asset flipping. They literally made an entire industry around it, and on top of asset flipping, they also made procedural systems and mods, mod APIs, so that they could let other people fix the bugs that they were too lazy to fix themselves.
Should have been quicker.
Where, as bad as the EA sports games are, at the very least, the EA is actively trying to
I need more fear, more terror.
1, 2, 3. Then we'll just end the turn. Next, we have a game called The Two of Us, which looks like nothing. It's free. Which I was probably trying to make some name confusion with It Takes Two. Here we have a game called Lost in Labs, which looks like nothing. 1259 English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have the Knight of Turn, which looks like nothing. If I had not played so much games, I probably should have curated this stuff. Space Extra is a shoot 'em up space game, free to play, English, virtually full audio. No to that. Nakorn Sampan, some kind of city builder. I'm not interested in it. $1.59, English only. The visuals here are too rough. It's one of these city builders where things merge together for bigger versions of the buildings. So like a 2048 almost clone on top of that. Alright.
Let's speed things up. Too slow. Too slow.
Let's try that out. Here we have a game called Push Battle, which looks like nothing. Here we have Variable Pictogram Jump, which looks like something, but not something good. $4.49. See, requires a controller. Here we have Pingu Royale, which looks a little bit better polished, but only slightly. Free to play, English only.
I don't know what winds whisked me here.
Here we have a prologue, so we can immediately dismiss a prologue as a demo. We have a game called Crazy Santa, which, yep. That doesn't look like anything. Here we have a game called Limita Lumini, which is some kind of VR experience, but it doesn't seem to be in English. Unfortunately, it's free, but it's Romanian only. Seems to be maybe some clay sculptor or painter. It looks like a painter, but then they show you a brick of clay. What looks like a brick of clay. Oh no. It's a brick, a regular brick, with a Nazi swastika sprayed on it, and I didn't even see it. It was just in such light pink. I don't think the Nazis would be using light pink to spray a swastika on it. And so they must have thrown it through the front of the art house, or the person's house, the artist's house. Like,
Forgive my rudeness.
Shine, beloved spear.
so yeah, that all of a sudden tells a different tale versus what the other stories are telling. And I guess that's just a great example of needing to be able to read being able to read the description, otherwise you can easily misunderstand what the story is. Video Games Chronicle says the Amiga 500's many 25 games and release dates have been confirmed. I will say,
I suppose I've lost
like,
some of my edge.
I don't think too many people are going to care about these older, lesser known minis. But the RetroPie Game Boy GPI case version 2 has now been announced, and with it is a USB-C dock that lets you dock it to a screen and plug in a wireless or wired controller, USB controller of any sort really, and it is running off of a compute module Raspberry Pi 4, not the Raspberry Pi 0, which was a much weaker processor. So they've really stepped things up here and put in a rechargeable battery. The only thing it doesn't have is an analog input, and it doesn't have an L2, R2 buttons. But it looks like a Game Boy. It has a lot of improvements. I'm not going to just completely describe it accurately, but it's really interesting looking, to say the least. But it then runs into its major point of contention, which is it's $90, and on top of that you're going to have to have your own separate memory card, SD card probably, because you probably don't want to buy the compute module that has eMCC memory on it. You also probably don't want to buy the compute module that has like 8 gigabytes of video card. You probably could do very fine with just 4 gigabytes of video RAM, and there's a lot of different versions to think about there, because you're still really only going to get on the Raspberry Pi 4 up to the Nintendo 64 emulation. In Nintendo 64 emulation has improved a little bit since the Raspberry Pi 3 came out, but you're not going to get anything above that really. And the only time in the Nintendo 64 you never touched the D-pad and the analog stick. It was pretty much designed that if you hated the analog stick, you could always play the games with the D-pad. So you kind of don't need an analog stick taking up space. So people are asking that, are either asking that because they expect that they're going to play some PSP or Vita game that actually use the analog stick. Otherwise, but for most simulation that a Raspberry Pi can handle, you don't need it. Plus, you have the dock option there, and at that point, you could probably get a USB connector or adapter for the new, a new or an old Nintendo 64 controller, whether you're going to get it from the Nintendo One or the original Nintendo One, and get some kind of adapter and just plug that into the docked version. Now, I think it is worthwhile to say that as I was trying to program and basically hack something into my GPI Case 1, I somehow in software sent a signal to overpower the audio, and that short-circuited the board, and I could never get it to work again. So I don't think most people are going to run into that problem though, but I would say this is a more niche product. It's not like they're going to have product runs of tens of thousands of these. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little bit more fragile and you have to be a little bit more careful. But yeah, on top of that though, that's not as much of a deal, because since it's using a compute module for Raspberry Pi 4, that means the special image and trying to get things to run on a Raspberry Pi Zero becomes less of an issue.
The truth there in the dark.
But yeah,
No.
I would like to get that, but between the complete compute module, which would probably be $50 or $60, and the case itself, which is $90 with the dock, you are basically $150 into a project. it definitely, as long as there aren't any unforeseen problems, it definitely does feel like this would be the way you would make a, this would be the case above all other cases now. Because you're getting the docking ability, which no other Raspberry Pi 4 case can really offer that, where you can undock and carry it and have a battery. There's not a lot of like cooling options specifically for the compute module either, so we'll probably start to see people making bits of aluminum to put as just passive coolers, so that you could possibly overclock the compute module, but I'm not sure you really even need to overclock it for anything other than maybe Nintendo 64. There's a space issue still too, where like you're just not going to get, you're not realistically going to spend the money to have a 2 terabyte or 1 terabyte micro SD card with all the games if you just wanted to have every single game that exists that could be emulated.
Die, cream.
Loyalty is ironclad. March
So you still are going to be somewhat limited.
harder armor.
It'd be nice to know for certain that the
Sneaky little.
USB-C
Loyalty is ironclad.
allows for like a host mode where you could plug in a thumb drive in the bottom of it and then copy the files over, or play games specifically plugged into the back of the dock that aren't in the micro SD. But otherwise it looks like it's kind of everything you would want, as long as you're sticking to that Game Boy form factor and that nostalgia. And if you're not sticking to that Game Boy form factor and that nostalgia, then at a certain point you might as well just get a Steam Deck. And I guess you should compare the price of a Steam Deck, which starts at like $550, but lets you potentially play much more modern PC games and run a lot more emulators. But yeah, instead of just talking about it, why don't I...
Honors are like diamonds. Wear them with pride. I'll never shatter.
My armor's been pierced.
Critter worth that.
My armor's been pierced.
Yeah, I did install the DuckDuckGo search thing. So, a little less tracking going on. So yeah, didn't do a great search here, but yeah, we can show it here. They've added a turbo button. It might be a hardwired turbo button and you might not be able to remap, and a home button, which probably is remappable. There's also a sleep button on the top to turn off the screen. If it's docked and you hit the sleep button, I don't know if it turns the screen back on. I don't know if it just automatically turns off the screen when it's docked anyways, because there's an HDMI out. There's 4 buttons on the side: start, select, D-pad. There is a headphone jack. You no longer have a setup where you're sliding in
Rydo and Steve advance as one.
You're not sliding in the Raspberry Pi Zero. Just kill myself that way. Like, in the first generation of the case, there was a fake Game Boy cartridge that would slide in, and the Raspberry Pi Zero was stuck in there. Now, the GPI, let's just make this bigger. This green part here is the compute module, and I'm not sure, but I think you can get a compute module without Wi-Fi. It might very well save you a few bucks in this case to not include the Wi-Fi.
There's a battle underway.
Particularly if you're going to make a specific build on this and you don't want people updating the software, which for RetroPie I kind of suggest that. And there's at least 3 different models as far as video RAM, and I think there's a different model with the EMC flash. But on the bottom of this are 2 rows of connectors that are, they call them 100 pin connectors. I don't know if it's actually 50 by 2. And then the micro SD card is set into a flip up setup where you just flip the part in, put the micro SD card in, and take it out. And so now this component just is a cover. Let's see. Zooming in didn't really help anything. So yeah, there's a turbo home. I assume the power LED actually still works. It'd be kind of weird to get rid of it. The screen went from 2.8 to 3 inches, so a slightly bigger screen. The right trigger and left trigger buttons are still there. Although this is, I think, pretty much a fake backplate now where the battery would be. This is what the cover looks like when in place. Like, because it is a rechargeable battery, where the first case actually had regular batteries. And then, yeah, they've just taken the notch out for the USB-C. And then this is the back of the dock, 2 USB, probably 2.0 connections, a DC in. It seems like it can take up to 15 amps of current, which is quite a lot, to charge. And then HDMI out. This is what it looks like docked. So yeah, looks very interesting. Like, I don't know what more I could even want. Like, because what you start to get into just ridiculous things. Like, if they were to put, say, haptic feedback in it, what game that could be emulated would have haptic feedback? There's like maybe a couple of Game Boy games that had a Rumble Pack on it, and some Nintendo 64 games that had Rumble Pack support. Not really anything else. Motion sensing, same thing. Not a single game I think would have motion sensing. Well, maybe there was a couple of Game Boy Advance games that had motion sensings, but not realistic there. I guess if you got the compute module without the Wi-Fi thing module, you probably couldn't do Bluetooth headphone connections, but I don't know how many people. I guess is that worth the difference in price, where the difference in price may not be that much.
All right, troops, get ready for war.
What I would like to see more in the builds than the hardware is a better, like, way to air share AirPlay, universal plug and play, share music, directly share music in movies and things like that. So you have a media player on top of a Game Boy. I know I wrote that code specifically so you could have MP3s and videos on the RetroPie build up, but I don't think that's gone anywhere since then.
Strike now.
I'll make a dignified exit.
Assemble!
Press on!
Yeah, there's not really a reason why you'd want a camera on it to take pictures, or front-facing camera or back-facing camera. There's not really a reason why you'd want GPS or cellular connectivity. You wouldn't really want to browse web pages on something like this. I will say it is a little bit weird that they never got around. Retroflag is the company, not RetroPie. Never got around to making something that looked more like a Game Gear, or but I guess there's just not enough demand or resources. They don't have enough resources to make that. I don't think there really is that much demand for something that look like a Game Gear instead. Because if you want something that looks like a Game Gear, you probably want something that looks just like a Vita at that point. And I think the next step would be to just straight up make something that looked like a Switch, with a widescreen resolution. And that would be, I guess, the next step is give me a widescreen monitor, but none of the games you can emulate would be widescreen in the resolutions anyways. So it's felt like the idea of retro devices,
No one gets past me.
A violation of the
the idea of the retro devices have probably started to hit a plateau, because unless there's major improvements in emulation technology, we really can't go any further. Plus, you start to get into, I think, maybe some moral hesitation if you're talking about emulating like PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 games and Xbox 360 and Xbox One games. That's just going to take a lot more power and like a lot more space, and then you run into limitations in the micro SD. You can't really squeeze an M2 stick into a Game Boy, probably. Like that, I guess that would be your next step. If you could put a M2 stick in there, and put an SSD, or a really slow, really cheap SSD that had a lot of space in it, that would be the only thing is storage. Storage is your last problem to address.
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
Just attack that for no reason. Anyways, that's the only thing I've even heard in months as far as the whole makerspace of that is slightly interesting. Video Games Chronicle says 2021's worst reviewed games include GTA Trilogy and eFootball. Let's see, we can look at the whole list. Well, Werewolf the Apocalypse. I guess I've forgotten that word. I would say Baleen Wonderworld actually got a lot more press for being awful than Werewolf the Apocalypse did, where there was a lot more apathy towards this, where people, I think, actually wanted Balan Wonderworld to succeed. Of Bird and Cage, I don't even recognize. Demon Skin, I don't recognize. Like, I looked at every single game, and these games do just flow off me like water off a duck's back in a lot of cases. It's a shame that Akiba's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed was so poorly reviewed. Must run terribly. Arkham Horror, Mother's Embrace. What really sucks here, though, and this is the top 9 instead of no, it's the top 10, but they're tied for 3rd place. What really sucks about this, though, is there's not a lot of games that are below 50 on that scale of 0 to 100, I assume. So, doesn't feel like that's it doesn't feel like the review system is particularly good. On top of that, I would say the review system looks pretty broken when I look here at Akiba's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed on Steam, and I see it's 82% positive of the 67% of people that actually played it. And in the last 30 days, it's 90% positive. So,
The eternal procession beckons.
I don't know specifically why this game would have been so poorly reviewed, other than to just have to fall back to my general assumptions that I don't want to have to just assume that it's just a hate for Japanese games, particularly Japanese games that play on the quirky nature of stripping energy vampires of their clothes. Let's see. Still plays like a PSP game from 2011, because it is. It looks ugly. Combat is terrible compared to what they say is last game, but this is a remake of the first game in the series. And in all fairness, this, even though I just put this on the wish list, this is potentially a game where I might just spotlight it and then jump to Akiba's Strip, Undead and Undressed, which in comparison is 86% positive, with a lot more people having played it. I think they just kind of do a bad job of telling people that Hellbound and Debriefed was a HD remaster of the first game in the series. And so it really was a release specifically to pander to the fandom and help the fandom in the West who weren't able to play the original game on PSP anymore, or ever. Maybe it may have never come out to the West.
Demonic blades have nothing on my knife.
That's why it's very important to make yourself as clear as possible, which I fail at quite a bit. We have another Marble League game, which, wow, it's very weird to see 2 different Marble games. Although in all fairness, this is doing something slightly different. I know there's a YouTuber that makes these like Marble League videos. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but $17.99 really screams way too much. He does these little Olympics with marbles representing people or competitors in the Olympics. Here we have a game called Yumili, which looks like it's just an RPG game, although it's being tagged as a Souls-like. It is Italian only, which, I wonder if there's been perhaps some limitations in that you have to submit a game with an English description or something, even if you don't have English language support. Just because I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't anybody at Valve that speaks Italian or Portuguese or any number of other languages. I wouldn't be surprised if that is actually the case. I don't even care what I do here. Moving on, VR Skywalk. It's an interesting idea, but it feels like it's kind of encouraging very dangerous behavior or simulating very dangerous behavior for that vertigo feeling, which I don't know how many people really want that. And the visuals here don't look particularly great. $2.99, whole bunch of languages. I think this concept, if you are going to do this, probably needs to be like super hyper realistic. And I don't think I can just believe that this is some attempt at like making exposure therapy, because I've seen too many asset flip looking games do this. And this definitely feels like an asset flip game just trying to do that. Here we have a game called VR Paper Airplane Hunter with just a bunch of anime girls flying in the sky for no reason. Which, I mean, at a certain level, I guess, if you're going to throw a paper airplane, I guess you might want some targets. I don't know if there's real reason to use anime girls, though. $2.39, whole bunch of language supports, requires VR.
Darkness is lit by truth.
You know, as much as I hate censorship and try to be on the side of anti-censorship in all ways, if you told me you were intentionally holding back the anime girl asset flip games to the weekend, and then you were letting the more quality games released during the week, I could almost forgive you in your ignorance of how you're making yourself judge, jury, and executioner there, but at least I would understand that impulse a little bit better. This game, Raid on Scorpion Island, is just an asset flip game. It's trying to look like G.I. Joe, I think. $9.99 is way too expensive. English only. Helicopter simulation game. But if you were going to do that in particular and try and limit the low effort asset flip games with anime girls in it, why not just eliminate them completely? Like, if you're so certain that you can tell the difference between a game where people put effort into it versus games where people aren't putting effort into it and they're just either trying to scam people or money launder, then why let them like just eliminate those types of games in the first place and not allow them? And inherently, that is what Steam Direct was all about anyways, was the idea that they would never be able to they would never ever be able to objectively determine what games are quality and what games aren't. So instead they just use Steam Direct to let everybody on Steam, or they pretended like they were going to let everybody on Steam. Meanwhile, that also makes Valve a ton of money when you let people who don't know better put your game on their storefront. This Toram Online looks like a decent MMORPG, but it's an MMORPG, so I'd never play it. It's free to play, has in-app purchases. It's English, Thai, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Here we have what looks like a Chinese or Korean live-action I would lean towards Korean live action visual novel. $4.99. Says it supports English. Full Korean audio.
I'm not a quack.
I'm gonna put this on the follow list. As a fan of Korean Netflix TV shows, somewhat, I've found quite a few. It might be somewhat interesting to try and cover this, but I wouldn't be surprised if in trying to cover this I get content ID claims. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually fairly hard to follow with subtitles and trying to play at the same time. So I think I would have to be fairly careful. But yeah, we'll see what the reviews say. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets several reviews from Korean people and no reviews from English speakers. Next we have a game on Steam here called Moon Law, which looks like a Metroidvania clone in the old school sense. Which that's an interesting thought, certainly. Normally I would completely dismiss something that looked just like an 8-bit NES game, but I'm willing to give this one a follow and give it a chance. It's free, it's English only, so it's probably super short. And I don't know. Doesn't seem like it would really connect to any of their other games. Right, let's just see how this works.
For victory! I go where the heels take me.
Here we have a game called Istanbul Ship Simulator, which looks like nothing. $4.49, full Turkish audio. Here we have Prototype Outpost 3, which looks like it's mostly asset flips, and maybe somebody here is trying to make something, but they are far, far away from being qualified to actually make a game. $6.29, English, Japanese, and Chinese. Allegedly full audio for all of those. Finally. If this throws me yet another free entry into an arena, man, am I going to be peeved about that. Like, I could use tickets, certainly. But I don't even really want to play. My head is spinning. I don't know why I feel so sickly today, but I do. I might very well just use Christmas as an excuse to take a little bit of a break. Here we have a game called Illuminati Remastered, which looks like nothing of interest. $3.99, English, allegedly full audio.
My quarry won't
We have
escape
something
that
called
easy.
Goddamn the Garden, which I guess is the opposite of God Bless the Garden. It's too low polygon for my taste, though. $4.49, English only. One of the things I've been running into is, while playing Fallout 3, is that I'm getting a bit of a crick in my neck. Looking down on my lower monitor is still not quite at the right angles. And I don't know a great way to fix that. Probably shouldn't be playing like 9 hours of Fallout in one day anyways. But yeah, just always struggling to try and make more content, always struggling to try to get more stuff done, often failing and feeling upset that I'm not getting much done. I'm probably too hard on myself, but I think like I think a lot of people probably say I don't do too much in comparison. There's lots of workaholics out there, and I think YouTubers in particular are in danger of being on the side of being workaholics. Here we have a game called Unstrong, which it looks like a platformer. It's visually polished a little bit better than average. It's not terrible looking, but in watching the video play, I don't see a lot here that I'd want to play. It's free to play, it's English only. Next we have a game called Unstable. These are not in alphabetical order, I don't think. This looks like a space asteroid shooter. Early access, 89 cents, English only. Allegedly full on you. Here we have a Galaxida Korea VR, which looks like nothing. Very low polygon for a VR game. Free to play, English only.
Quit while you're ahead, loser.
And let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Snowman Arena, which looks like nothing. $8.49, English and Czech, allegedly full on you. Here we have a game called Tap Wizard, which I don't think is anything, but I think I might be generous and give it a follow. No, it's free to play with in-app purchases, so that eliminates it from my consideration. Is that tapping idle kind of top-down twin stick shooter? It's really got too much going on the screen too. Just too many enemies, too much of that. Okay. This, and then this.
Quit while you're ahead, loser.
The words escaped me.
And then go ahead and put one on the field. Video Games Chronicle says the Cruising Blast creator wants to bring the original trilogy to Switch Online or remake it. Cruising Blast, I guess, wouldn't have been the same people that made Cruising USA, because I think Cruising USA World were both made by Rare. I don't know if Exotica was made by Rare. So he wants to bring back or remake games he probably didn't work on. Oh no, according to this article, this creator, Jarvis, Eugene Jarvis, actually was not only the creator of the Cruising trilogy, but also made Smash TV, Robotron 2084, and Defender, which that is quite a lineup, and I would not have thought that the person who made Robotron 2084 actually made Smash TV, and I definitely wouldn't have thought that they would have made
No, I lost.
oh, quick disconnect. We will take that.
Looks like I won.
Okay. Now it's gonna be just all about ranked, I think. And I guess I just missed out on the daily mission resets because I didn't accomplish it. So I don't get any chance to get more temporary gems. Alright, well. Ranked. Just play whatever I want. Yeah, that is really shocking. And I guess it really highlights some of my own ignorance, is that A, I didn't know who made Defender, Robotron, or Smash TV. B, I've never tried to investigate it. I imagine there's a lot of things I don't know that I don't know that I don't know. The unknown unknowns is a phrase I think that was once used. After he made the games for arcades, they were ported to Nintendo 64. I guess maybe Nintendo was the publisher for the arcade games. I think they were. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they were completely individual games. Then he set up Raw Thrills, which made Guitar Hero Arcade, The Fast and Furious, and Terminator Salvation. So yeah, I guess he would be the person to bring him back, if there is a person to bring back the cruising series. Which, yeah, it would make sense to make that. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle. Nintendo patents shed lights on new Breath of the Wild 2 abilities. Free falling, rewind, and passing through ceilings are all detailed in new new patents, which arguably I don't know if you should be filing patents for generic concepts like free falling or rewinding time. Like, the whole patent system is ridiculous. It needs an overhaul, particularly in the realm of software. Patents were supposed to be for methods of doing things, and even when they were supposed to be protection of methods of building things physically, they still didn't really make sense, because it really is just protectionist, protecting the richest of the rich people. Which, yeah, that's the problem with the United States government in general, is that it has completely, from day one, been built to protect rich people. And a starting from scratch concept might make some sense.
Meow-wee! Ready to pounce.
You crossed the line.
I don't even know if this is true anymore. Remnant from the Ashes was one of the free games on the Epic Games Store. I probably missed it. Video Games Chronicles says Final Fantasy VII Remake is seemingly headed to Steam according to a data mine. Which, yeah, that's totally believable. Japanese Gran Turismo 7 pamphlet confirms that it has over 90 tracks. Let's see. Of course, a journalist has said that the Final Fantasy VII Remake was the worst AAA PC port in a long time. This is from Digital Foundry, Alex Batiglia. Which I don't really feel like that's news at that point. Like, quoting a journalist's opinion seems like you've gone too far into allowing a journalist or helping a journalist become the news instead of reporting the news. Octopath Traveler, Champions of the Continent, may be coming to the West according to a trademark filing. Here we have a game on Steam called Magic Disc Golf, which there might be a room for a Magic Disc Golf game, or disc golf game in general, but I'm not quite sure that this is it. It's $11.99. I kind of feel like you would need a lot more than an 18-hole course and a 6-hole practice course, and you probably would want VR support if it's gonna look like that and feel like it would benefit from VR support. Here we have a game called Far Life. Kind of looks like they got an alien model and then made a very generic asset flip game around that. $10.79, English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, I think we can skip this. I don't think there's a real game there. Here we have a full motion video game called Diluted, which pretty much have to put on the follow list because we just don't know. English full audio, $8.49. We just need to get some user feedback to see how bad potentially the acting is, if the acting is bad. I should have played this, then played that. Here we have a game on Steam called Blocky Snake, which just looks like a 3D version of Snake. 59 cents, English full audio. It may not actually be a Snake game, it may be more of a infinite runner. Here we have Search All Foxes, another hidden object game for $2.99. Whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio and everything, bundled together with 32 other items for $186. Okay.
I'll get it right this time. No!
I needed one more thing.
You were done for. Let him go! Why is this so hard? The miasma pervades all.
Next we have a game on Steam called Collector Thief, which looks like an asset flip game. $10.99, English only. Here we have Escape from COVID, which obviously is a low effort game from the visuals. Early access 99 cents, English. Here we have another hidden object game, 100 hidden anima knots. Yeah, if anything, this feels like this is a different company trying to copy the art visual aesthetic of the other low effort hidden games, hidden object games. This one's English and not bundled because it is a different company. Here we have a game called Witch Explorer, which is some kind of tower defense game. It has some visual polish to it, but it is, I think, at the end of the day, still just a tower defense game. So, I'm going to put this on the follow list just because I want to see if the anime girl aesthetic somehow here would convince enough people to want to play this to get over the fact that it's a tower defense game. Me personally, I don't know if I could still even then get over the fact of it being a tower defense game because that still seems kind of ridiculous. That being said, if you get away from the art style, it also looks like there is kind of more of a gameplay mechanic here. And this might be been a case where somebody wanted to make a game and didn't want to make a visual novel, which is what they normally build into. It seems like they more wanted to make a side-scrolling bullet hell shooter, and just ended up also adding tower defense mechanics to it.
This is how you do fireworks.
Pain, go away! Come on, smile! No!
So yeah, that does look a little interesting. It's $6.29. English, Spain, Spanish, Chinese, and Japanese. It may be too short for its own good, and it does contain nude scenes, which you definitely have an interesting diversity split here, where This game apparently has nude scenes in it, and yet none of the screenshots really give any indication of that. And it's not even tagged that way.
No!
So that's a little weird.
My blade is autumn. I am the father.
We probably have to kind of look at the YouTube rules as far as nude scenes, if that was the case, because theoretically YouTube does allow some nudity, maybe not in their family-friendly monetization guidelines, but they allow it in some such circumstances if it's not overemphasized. But what does it mean if it's overemphasized? That's a very nebulous concept. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Stocks, which I assume is just a misspelling of a stock market trader simulating game. It's free to play, English only. I think we can easily say no to that. Here we have a collector's edition of Solitaire games for $11.04. Here we have a game called Creatures Village,
Fighting and despair, all you know.
which looks like a kid's game.
Am I right?
Looks like it might be a re-release of an old kid's game that I don't really recognize. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just to see if maybe people have some nostalgia for this and I just don't recognize it. It's $5.99 English only. I suspect though, even if people do recognize it, that they wouldn't be particularly too interested in it. Enough to like rebuy it and play it. And then the same company also has this game called Creatures the Albion Years, which it too feels like a re-release of an old game. So my suspicion is there was some series called Creatures a long time ago, and it's just been forgotten in the annals of time. Here we have a game on Steam called Source Worlds, which looks a little too polygony as a kind of MMORPG. It's also fairly ambitious because you're going all over the place. Inside dungeons, inside cities, feudal times, pirate areas. Several different themes there. $9.89 English full audio. Third party EULA. Here we have a game called Santa Protects the Christmas Tree, which seems like nothing really. Kind of like a tower defense game where you're as Santa trying to stop the snowman. Let's see, do this. And do this.
Time for perennial prayer has come.
Yeah, I still don't feel like any Christmas themed game really makes a lot of sense. It would make a lot more sense for games to simply just have Christmas free DLC. But usually if a game even has Christmas content, it's either hard coded into the game and they don't even mention it, or it is something that's hard coded in the game and they do mention it, but it kind of doesn't matter. Alright, well, probably won't play that. Here we have a game on Steam called MMA Championship, which looks too low polygon and unpolished, and for some reason has guns in it. Yep, entire guns. $1.99 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Mines of Frostheim, which just looks like an RPG game. Free to play, English only. And then we have a game called Motor Town Behind the Well, which looks like nothing. $13.49 English, Czech, and French.
May happiness be with you.
Let's see. Play this, I guess. Video Games Chronicles says Psychonauts 2 Double Fine says it's working on multiple new projects. Team wants to explore new ideas, visual styles, and more, which would be great if they got away from their from the Psychonauts double visual style. But Double Fine has worked in several different visual styles. What they're not really saying here, as far as major changes in gameplay mechanics, so I still kind of expect Double Fine games to either be turn-based RPGs or 3D platformers such as Psychonauts, or turn-based RPGs like Candy Crush, but I kind of suspect they aren't going to go back and try and do something like Brutal Legend, either in the sense of making an action hack and slash game or in the sense of making a real-time strategy game. I heavily suspect that we will start to see some people from Double Fine working on games from other companies, particularly some new blood at Bethesda. Since I'm playing Fallout 3 right now, like, would make some sense. It would be at least interesting experiment to see what somebody from Double Fine would say about what they would want to do for Fallout series or Elder Scrolls series. I'm gonna play this just because I want to draw 2 cards. Really though, this is not an announcement of anything. It's a tease. Video Games Chronicles says Bandai Namco has registered another Klonoa trademark, this time in UK, so this old game Klonoa is either getting a re-release or a remaster. Remake.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Jeez. One of the things this does not look like Klonoa. This looks like something completely different.
Give me peace.
This is Tales of Arise. I don't know why there's a video there from that. This, I think, is Klonoa. Yeah, this weekend I was going to adjust my Wi-Fi settings and see if I could speed it up a little bit, but yeah, I didn't get around to that, and I don't think I want to mess with that right now. Another game driver from GeForce is available. I literally just updated it like 3 or 4 days ago. I guess I updated it probably out of cycle, though. That would be my guess as to what happened there.
I'm already a proper lady, you know. Pain, go away!
You could use some shine yourself.
Unless there's maybe an emergency update. I guess that could be it. That there is some kind of weird emergency update that they need to put out. But I don't like to update drivers in between playing games, in case it drastically changes the visuals.
I'm coming for you.
Let's keep on. Let's not lose momentum here. Battlefield 2042 originally featured earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanoes, it's been claimed. Yeah, I guess that would kind of make sense.
Little Hex's payback.
There is a twister, and the other ideas have been cut. Which, in all fairness, since you're always every year making a new battlefield, you could focus specifically on a twister this game, and then make an earthquake the next game. Volcanoes and tsunamis. Like, a volcano eruption's probably not going to change the gameplay as much as you would think. And even tsunamis probably not going to change the gameplay as much as you think, because those are kind of slower acting emergencies. Still very much emergencies, I'll grant you that, but
You could use some shine
it's
yourself.
not
You
a
could
case
use some
where
shine yourself.
you have a volcano just erupt out of the blue with no warning, and then there's just lava everywhere, or a tsunami happening without warning. It can happen fast, but you usually get 10-20 minute warnings, and for a round in a game, 10-20 minutes maybe most of the round. Let's see. According to a data mine, Season 1 for Battlefield 2042 starts in March, although I don't think too many people probably care. Xbox Series X are currently in stock on Amazon UK, which, yeah, I don't know how rare or hard it's been to get an Xbox Series X. It's probably been somewhat hard. I definitely haven't heard of a lot of stock showing up. PlayStation Plus owners of Final Fantasy VII Remake are getting the PS5 upgrade this week. They were previously excluded from the June's free update. This also, I think, includes some of the people that may have gotten the Final Fantasy VII Remake at a fairly steep discount or free. But yeah, it's just another example of people, them causing controversies for themselves when they really had no need to do that.
You could use some shine yourself.
This is where I truly shine.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicles says George R.R. Martin discusses Elden Ring. Quote, "It looks incredible." He calls Miyazaki's work groundbreaking. Okay, cool. I hope it is pretty to look at. I hope there's actually a game there also. I hope it actually comes out. Video Games Chronicle says a new Gran Turismo 7 video shows off the game's PS5 exclusive features, which I guess you can check out that article if you're interested. And then Loop Heroes Epic Store's one day only free game, which I think is today, but I may have missed it. It may actually be a different game today. And somehow FIFA 2022 has taken Christmas #1 spot on the UK physical games chart, which, that's a little shocking.
This is where I truly shine.
But I guess that does kind of highlight how even as a kind of bad game, FIFA still dominates incredibly highly, particularly in the UK. Here we have a game on Steam called GP Bikes that, yeah, it doesn't look particularly colorful, and I think that hurts it severely, just having no textures and no skins on it. $24.99 is very expensive. VR mode, English only. Here we have something called Cinemoji series, which I guess is a couple of emojis, and then you guess the name of it. Let's see if we can do some of these. Black Mirror would be the first one. which that's fairly easy.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Crown, question mark, lady, dragon, man, snow. I mean, clearly this is Game of Thrones, but it seems like it's not a text one-to-one comparison like Black Mirror here. And then, like, scientist, guy, drug, pill, work together, handshake, money. I want to say unbreakable. But no, this is actually Breaking Bad. Teacher, cancer, loses his hair, drugs, a duck in a karate suit, which, I mean, you could just break these around. I want to say it's Karate Kid, but there's not enough letters and there's no D. It's not the Mighty Ducks. Duck Karate. Duck. And what would the second word be?
Wager your soul. I'll thunder you.
Hey, eyes on the flag.
Blink but once. I'll
Like,
extinguish your soul.
all the letters here are right for Breaking Bad. And this one you would assume is Batman, but it's actually Gotham. So then what would this be? What can you even spell with these letters as far as the three-letter word? Something bar. But if you take out the bar, then you have... Again, maybe they cheated here and they put the wrong letters. Or maybe this is supposed to be the name of a show that's that's written in a different language with these letters. Something car. It could be car instead of bar. But yeah, I have no idea. No idea what that's supposed to be.
Oh.
I have no
So, as a game, Cinemoji series doesn't sound terrible. 59 cents is probably too cheap though. And seems like there's several Cinemoji things. So yeah, I would say this is a good concept that needs a little bit more polish to it. Like, if the You Don't Know Jack people were doing this with a combination of other mini games, this would probably work fairly well. It doesn't work particularly well as single player, and you can see there's no online options, so there's some problems there still. Next we have a game called Acid Trip, which looks like garbage. $2.24, allegedly full audio. Let's see. Destroy that. And attack and win.
Way over my head here.
I was actually winning here and was gonna end up failing just because I'm not paying enough attention.
Suffering.
Like one more ranked. Well, 2 more ranks. That's all we need. Next we have on Steam Slobbish Dragon Princess 2. It's obviously a visual novel with dragon anime girls. It definitely looks like a game that would have some lewd or nude content in it, but it's being published by Sekai Project, and so I'm not 100% sure. $13.49, full Japanese, English, and Chinese subtitles. Suggestive themes is the only thing here, which there is kind of just this weird catch-22, I think, where I could say, well, why would I want to play a game that just has suggestive themes? Why not just play a game that goes the full Monty? But then I could also say, well, actually I only want to play games that have suggestive themes because then they will let me potentially monetize them on YouTube. You can see this Slobbish Dragon Princess Love Plus came out in June, so they're rushing out games, and this arguably is relative enough to put it on the follow list. And I think that's where I'll leave it, is I'll just leave the first game on the follow list and think about it some more. I think the answer is probably no. Meanwhile, basically at the exact same time, you have Rewrite Plus, which is another visual novel. Although it seems like there might be a little bit more game here. Or at the very least, there is a major improvement in enthusiasm here. This is Japanese full audio. So, yeah. Again, I'm going to put this on the follow list, even though it technically has enough. No, actually, I don't really have a reason not to just put this on the wish list. Arguably, Rewrite Plus might be a remake of Rewrite. But that probably won't matter too much.
Ding dong! May happiness be with you.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd ever find time or energy to cover visual novels, per se, though. Because even while I am playing Fallout 3, the fact that the main character is not voiced is really irritating, because I'm picking lines of dialogue and then not reading them out and not really reading anything. And then I'm having somebody respond, but even the responses are pretty pathetically unimportant in Fallout 3. Which pretty much goes to negate any interest in any of the conversations ever happening.
May happiness be with you.
They're tolerable in Fallout 3, where they frankly were not tolerable in Fallout 1 for the less than an hour I tried to play Fallout 1. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Cold Verdict, which looks like visual novel or adventure game with a lot of visual novel elements. I kind of want to give this a chance,
May happiness be with you.
although there's not really a lot of reason to give it a chance. $3.19, English only.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Because I do believe there probably is a small number of people who would like to make a game like Mass Effect, but they need some asset flip models. They can't just do all the animation that big companies could do. And so this might be an example of somebody trying to do that. This also doesn't look incredibly terrible. The backgrounds look kind of bad, but everything could look a lot worse. Maybe I'm just being a little too generous for my own good. Komatsu articles. They have a DNF duel about MP trailer. Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai has been delayed to an unannounced date. Which the blur still is working. This doesn't look terrible. It kind of has like a Dragon Ball feel to it, and in all honesty, when Dragon Ball was being made into an anime, it was a very different art style and a very different time, and seeing kind of almost a throwback to that feel and style would be interesting. There's very few fantasy stories being told that also don't try to be more hyper realistic, and you very rarely get the feeling that you just have a young boy protagonist in stories, anime stories these days, where that was all the fashion in the old days of Dragon Ball 1. So, story. And story. I can't get any more amulets on the field, can I? So I think we'll just end that there. Yu-Gi-Oh! Masters Duel has an overview trailer, dual deck, solo, and shop. Which, yeah, I'm keeping my attention turned to this Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, which looks a little bit better looking. In a lot of ways, though, the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! In particular is that I've tried to get into Konami Yu-Gi-Oh! Games multiple times, and they very quickly feel like they're not very polished, they're not trying very hard, and that they're just trying to get you to buy a lot of in-app purchases to buy cards. And then they also, on top of that, tend not to really maintain support for the games, and then instead want to just re-release a new game that's only slightly different. So if Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel comes out before the Second Dinner Marvel card game comes out, I might check it out, but I don't know if I'd even bother to check it out if I'm already playing the Second Dinner Marvel Marvel games.
This is how you do fireworks.
Okay. Here we have a game on Steam called Botvinic Chess, which looks like it's a kind of joke chess game. 69 cents English only. I'm not 100% sure that you actually play chess in it. Here we have a game called Brutal Orchestra, which has some weird looking visuals, but mostly still looks like an RPG game of no real interest. $13.49 English only. We have Catherine Ragnar and Legend of the Flying Dutchman, which is seemingly mostly a match 3 game. $5.39, English only. Here we have a game called Nature's Trek Together, which looks like it's probably just asset flips. Maybe it's a VR game with online connectivity. $10.49, English, allegedly full audio. It does kind of feel like the idea is that you'd have a whole bunch of people all connected to this one island, somewhat interacting, but maybe not really interacting that much.
I'll get it right this time. You're done for. Let him go.
Give me peace.
Here we have a game called War of the Three Kingdoms, which is overwhelmingly negative, so it definitely looks like it's either being review bombed by Chinese people for some reason, which I don't know why. That would be the reason. Or it just plays awful. It's free. It's an MMO with in-app purchases. Greedy company and garbage game in a nutshell is the review here.
This little hex's payback.
Give me your stuff, and I might let you live.
Yep. Next we have Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. This feels like a really old game being republished. I feel like there's probably some relevancy here, so I have to put this on the follow list. $29.99, English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. But yeah, if you were telling me this was a brand new game, it looks very weird for a brand new game. Most of the interplay stuff is kind of older re-releases at this point. And Interplay made Fallout 1, but noticeably it is now owned outright by Microsoft, I guess. Would be the people who owned it now.
This is where I truly shine. You're mean.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually several other game series that Interplay made or worked on that they've sold. I imagine the Interplay that exists now is probably not the same Interplay that existed back in the day. But they were a big name game developer at one point. Next we have a game called Arena of Kings, which... yeah, I don't see anything here. Is it free to play in-app purchases? Yeah, some of the RPG elements, particularly the helmets and the hats in Fallout 3 don't make sense. They might as well not exist. Because you wear armor and it gives you like a damage reduction of somewhere around maybe 10 to 30 damage reduction, and then a hat will give you somewhere between 1 and 3 damage reduction, and maybe you can find a good hat that'll give you some other element that is important, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a lot of cases you don't even find that. You don't get any kind of perk increase.
It seems I've lost.
Okay. Next we have a game on Steam called Zephyrus Prelude, which looks kind of interesting, but it's a prelude, so a demo, so we'll wait till the real game comes out. Some kind of VR experience.
I'll show you.
We have a game called Skyfleet, which looks like it's just flying around and shooting each other.
I envy you.
Not particularly interesting looking game. And I can see the beginning of the end. Good. Maybe we can rush through. Maybe we can rush through the remaining news and end a little bit earlier. I feel like I might want to just take a nap after today's stream and not even try to do one episode of Fallout 3. I also need to double check like when things are supposed to air, because I wouldn't be surprised if I am dangerously close to something not airing on time.
Is fighting and despair all you know? You must die!
I sure hope once we get out of the Christmas holiday season that I start getting more people in the comments again, but maybe I need to be more consistent as to when I actually stream, if that is going to be my desire too. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article. The Dragon Ball FighterZ DLC character Android 21 with a lab coat has been announced. So, not, I think, much of a difference. Because it definitely sounds like there already was an Android 21 character, and they've just put her in a different costume. This is a costume character I kind of somewhat recognize, but perhaps they should have done a slightly better job on differentiating how they labeled them. This is kind of shocking. A smartphone game, Black Clover Mobile, has been announced for iOS and Android, due out in 2022 in Japan. I don't feel like there's been a Black Clover anything in at least 3 or 4 years. So we're starting to see almost this desire to make mobile games based on previous generations of animes instead of the most recent animes, which maybe there is a strategy around that would make some sense and help the fact that there would just always be a bit of a delay, quite a bit of a delay between a anime releasing on TV and when a video game could get made and be released.
My place is on the front line.
So yeah, that's certainly a thought, something to consider, but I don't know if it's going to actually work for people. Then Gamatsu says DNF Duel launches in the summer of 2022. So now we have a general time. I don't know if we have a specific release date yet, though. And then Gamatsu has this week's Japanese game releases with Dynasty Warriors 9, Cotton Fantasy, and more. Yeah, I Kiss, 11, Sakura and Scarlet, Cotton Fantasy, Dynasty Warriors 9, Empires, Star Wars Jedi Knight Collection, Star Wars Racer and Commando Combo, Tetsudo Nippon Rosen Taibi Sangi Tetsudo Hen, whatever that is. And then Uta no Princess Sama All-Star for Nintendo Switch. Hen means pervert, so this probably is an adult game if I was to guess, but doesn't inherently mean that. It could mean that there's just a character that the title is calling a pervert, which is not as insulting as it would be in English. Hen could also just mean strange, not particularly pervert, although it's typically not used in that context. Here we have a game on Steam called Inverse Evolver, which looks like a platformer. It's really zoomed in, even though it's pixely, and I think that might give me more of a reason to want to play this, but it also kind of feels like it's still too much of a bullet hell crazy game. Like they've got like a portal gun they used and all kinds of different mechanics that they're using. Yeah, it just seems like there's way too much going on here. It's early access, 4.19, English and Chinese. I want to give this a follow just to see if people like it, but I suspect the answer is no. Here you have like a Sonic haircut. And there's just a box. There's a lot of references happening to other games. Next we have the Great Lakes Simulator, which looks like nothing of interest. $19.99, English, allegedly full audio. Let's save this. And do I want to do anything else? Nope.
Stop!
The filth in these canals.
You're done for.
There's no time for you slugs.
Everything was for today.
Stop! No!
I'm gonna go ahead and just check the Epic Game Store right now and see what the free game is. Yeah, right now it is Loop Hero, so might as well get it. This is the Epic Game Store's big point of the year to try and bring in new blood, I suppose.
You were done for.
And bring in like new consumers and grow their storefront.
Should have been quicker.
Although I don't really know if there's a lot of reason to believe any of that would happen.
You need backup there?
No!
I guess Rocket League also feels like it's mostly dead at this point. Like they kind of failed to maintain interest in it once it went to being an Epic Game Store exclusive.
The real battle
I definitely don't see people streaming it and people playing it anymore. But it kind of was a flash in the pan anyway, so
Back to the hideout.
yeah, that's not really too surprising.
My crew stands with me.
Yeah, we have a game on Steam called A Distant Stabbing, which
It won't be long now.
looks like it's a physics game of some sort.
Hold up your swords with pride.
It really doesn't look particularly polished. $7.99 English only. It kind of feels like there's only 3 backgrounds and then there's some pretty awful controlling around that. Here we have a game called Amelie, which looks like another visual novel. Let's see, $3.59 is fairly cheap for a visual novel, English only. About an hour and a half of gameplay. Yeah, should I dismiss short visual novels because they're short? Or should I embrace them? I think I should probably embrace them as much as anything else.
Watches over us.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Why have I not just pinned the Borderlands Twitter feed always next to the shift code redeem pinned tab? That makes so much sense. That way every time the Borderlands Twitter feed gives the shift code, it's right next to the place where it needs to be. Moving on. Sorry, I'm going quiet here. A otome visual novel, Ikemen Sengoku Romances Across Time, Arata Narudei is coming to Switch on April 28th in Japan. Which, yeah, a lot of these don't come to the West. Let's see. Can just destroy that.
Rejoice.
And then do that. Then what do we want to do here?
Stand down.
Ah, that was a mistake.
So this is my end.
Moving on, Komatsu has an article here. A psychological horror game, Phobia, Saint Defina Hotel, launches in 2022 for the PS4, Xbox Series, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and PC. Which, the screenshot looks somewhat interesting, but isn't really showing a lot.
When my honor is a knight.
I have to get strong. Stronger than I am now.
Let's see. We have a Gematsu article here saying Yoshinori Ono has confirmed move from Delightworks to a new company under Aniplex. So, Delightworks, which seems like it's potentially one of many companies that Japanese people are leaving and fleeing, which is very different. In a lot of ways, it may not seem like it's a big social revolution here, but there actually is, for Japanese people, I think, a major social revolution happening in which people, at least in the video game industry, are willing to leave jobs and willing to go out and try to do something on their own or with a different company. Whereas, if you quit a job or got fired from a job in the old days, that potentially was the end of your life and just time to literally hang yourself.
I'm handing you over to the gods.
I envy you.
Moving on, Stalker 2 developer has U-turned on NFT plans after a huge backlash. The studio will now cancel anything NFT related just a few days after announcing its plan. This was the one where you could get NFTs that would put an NPC, non-playable character, in your game. But yeah, I feel like people intentionally put out these announcements just to see the backlash and test the waters. And I wouldn't be surprised if they had no plans of really doing they never really had any plans whatsoever of doing NFTs, and they were just trying to wear down people's rage, which that is how a lot of things get added slowly. Is it's just like, oh, we'll put in purchases, people will push back, then we'll push a little bit more, and people push back a little less, then we'll push a little bit more, and then one day you wake up, every game has some form of DLC or microtransactions or pre-ordering in them. Like, it's hardly been a case that gamers have rised up and succeeded at destroying the concept of pre-ordering, the concept of DLC, and in-app purchases, the concept of just trying to double monetize or make games even more expensive. We may have slowed down the progression of these monetization tactics somewhat, but we may not have actually accomplished much at all.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Let us sing a toast to friendship.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Ochi-Tsubaki, which looks like it's a very text-based game. It's got some interesting visuals, kind of like old manga visuals, it feels like, but not a lot of screenshots happening here. And I don't think there's much to this. $12.59 English and Japanese. It definitely, to me, feels like some of these mature content ratings are getting really crazy. This game contains a character who was sexually abused as a child and metaphorically references to that abuse, and it also contains violence. But yeah, that's a lot. It's experimental poetic storytelling structure, retro anime aesthetic, and a lush original orchestra soundtrack. That just seems like you're all over the place with this game. But I don't want to just dismiss being all over the place too, so I'm gonna be generous and put this on the follow list. I bet nobody ever plays this game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games that gets a lot of praise by Western video game critics and then never actually gets played by any of them.
How about a tune?
Eternal supplication.
But yeah, I'll give it a chance. Here we have a game on Steam called Ready or Not, which just looks like it's probably an asset flip first person shooter. Doesn't look terrible, but that's the problem, is that everything now looks pretty good. It's single player with online co-op. Early access, English only. Guess we'll give it a chance. Playground Games apparently is the name of the company that is working on Fable. And so they're looking for a senior script writer for Fable. Which it's not going to be Peter Molyneux. And arguably, I guess they just don't have anybody else. This is too interactive of a video or of a web page for its own good. Like, you don't need to show me a video of somebody drawing in just for no reason. Particularly now with the whole accept our cookies, click the accessibility, here's a pull down menu, here's a logo. Like, it just don't need all of that.
You crossed the line.
Go away!
Okay.
You were done for.
Evolve this one. Hit that. Hit that one. Power these guys up. Attack here.
Eternal supplication.
Attack here. End the turn. And then GameDeveloper.com has a report here. Ubisoft CEO compares the NFT backlash to the microtransaction anger, which I mean, it is a fair comparison. Here we have a game on Steam called Project Polygon, which we can immediately dismiss. $4.99 English. Here we have a game called Film Mechanism, or Fill Mechanism. It doesn't look particularly interesting. $16.99, several languages. I do want to get to the main storefront of Steam in a couple days because the winter sale is going to start happening. Here we have a game on Steam called Unmetaverse, which just looks like an asset flip game. You're playing as an anime girl, anime cat girl in VR. Doesn't feel too much focused around that idea though. It feels like it's just trying to do your generic archery stuff in VR and just generic random gameplay. It's free to play as an MMO or single player, but seems to only support Japanese. Let's see. Play that.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Evolve this and do 2 more damage.
The real battle begins.
Here we have a game on Steam called Magnificent One, which just looks like a top-down space shooter of no interest. $2.69 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have one called Astral Dream or Reality, which looks like an asset flip horror game, which is the first asset flip horror game we've seen today. $8.99 German only. You don't get a lot of German only games, but I still have to say no. Here we have Space Docker VR, which, yeah, I don't think there's anything really too appealing there. $12.74 English, allegedly full audio. I feel like a space docking simulation game is just going to be doomed to a lot of failure. Anybody trying to play that game is going to just fail over and over again and crash, much like Kerbal Space Program, where you just kind of constantly were crashing if you weren't lucky. Here we have a game called Deedland Pocket Planet, which looks kind of interesting as a concept. A small planet where you're doing a farming life simulator. Kind of like the Little Prince, that story, The Little Prince, but at the end of the day, this really just feels like a Stardew Valley game wrapped around a planet. And you can see the reviews are already mixed. It's $14.99. Several languages supported. We have about 5 more tabs. We have a game called Eraser, which I don't know if there's really a game here. So it almost feels like it's supposed to be a dropper map or a vertical jumper map. But whatever it is, I really question why it has so many positive reviews. That being said, I'll put it on the follow list. It's free, and so free may make all the difference in a game like this. Whereas if it actually costs money, I could see people being more upset by it, or more picky.
If they don't kill you first.
All the fluffy hugs. No, the smiles are not free.
Okay, I can pretty much win. just by playing this card next turn.
Nothing I can't handle.
Next we have a game on Steam called One Line, which looks like nothing. 69 cents. Allegedly full audio in every language it supports. Here we have a game called Die Frosty, which is still, I think it's a little bit more polished than normal. I just don't think I'd ever want to play any kind of platforming game quite like this. A puzzle game. But I don't want to become too limiting, so I'm going to give it a chance, be generous. $4.89 English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have a game called Battle Royale, which seems like it's just Scrabble. Scrabble in a Battle Royale online PvP concept with in-app purchases. Not a terrible thought, but since it doesn't have a single player mode, I still have to say no to it. It is an interesting idea, certainly, though. Seems like the board closes in smaller and smaller around areas where you have to score, which very possibly could make the game near impossible to actually win against. Or it'd be very random based, I suspect. Let's see. Next we have a game called Cruise Ship Handling, which looks like nothing of interest. $5.94 English only. Then we have a game called Rogue Invaders, which kind of has this black and white art style as a side-scrolling shooter. It kind of feels like it would almost be a tower defense game. But no, it's a more Contra style run and gunner. Okay, interesting. $17.99 is fairly expensive. English, allegedly full audio. I'm gonna give it a chance and see how people review it. Yeah, we have a game called Six Faces, which looks like nothing of interest. And then our final game, until I go through our tabs again, is Infinity Treasures, which just looks like an infinite runner of no real interest. 59 cents English only. And so we've managed to succeed faster.
This is how you do fireworks. Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
So yeah, I could have won there. Yeah, we've managed to succeed a lot earlier than I
pray that
normally do.
From suffering.
We've gone a full 3 hours though, and arguably, if I could get streams down to 2.5 hours, I would love to. I'm gonna start one game here and just basically not play, and I'm going to go through Twitter feeds and see if anything new has come out. I imagine in the last 3 hours we've gotten a couple games coming out.
My son will slay you.
You know, my general saying that it seems like they are holding all of the games, all the adult games and loot games, to release during the weekend only really makes a lot of sense if you can count most of Monday as part of the weekend too, because there are even somewhat early late afternoon releases on Monday. It's Tuesday through Thursday effectively when the good announcement slots I think exist for video games. Just because if a news reporter comes in at 6 in the morning on a Monday and they get a news story, they still probably would spend most of the day, if not the entire day, writing up the story to talk about it. Talk about the press release the next day. So we have some games that came out, but really only 3. One called Rust Raiders, which looks like it's a card-based roguelite. Nothing particularly interesting. And then we have a game called Splooge Royale, which looks like nothing. $4.49 English only. Then we have a game called Shankrim Code Reborn, which I would have to kind of assume is an asset flip game, but it is all over the place. Let's actually look at some of the gameplay before we immediately dismiss it. Yeah, I think I'll be generous and give this a follow, although I do think it is an asset flip game. $18.99 follow. Arguably, the fact that we see drones and shooting feels less asset flipping than it really should be. Then we have Survival Girls, which you just kind of assume that would be anime girls. But instead, it does kind of seem like they are trying to make a survival game. Now, arguably, is it just an asset flip survival game from the looks of the polish on it? I would say probably. Is there really much difference between a survival boy versus a survival girl? Not really. Just the 3D model you use. Like, that is part of the problem I think with Fallout 3 also, is that they have this character generator and you spend probably an hour at the beginning of the game to create your character, and then you never actually see the character. Like, because you're in first person mode almost always, except for when you get a VATS kill. And even then, you're not really paying attention to the character or seeing the character that much. Everybody else in Skyrim is using that character to a certain level, but the character creator system to a certain level, but not by much. All of the raiders look pretty much the same, and all of the custom characters that you talk to have been handcrafted using the custom creator to look the same. So from game to game, they don't look different. And I think in a lot of ways that's true with like where objects are for the most part in Skyrim. Like, you search a desk somewhere, and in one run it probably will have nearly the exact same stuff as it would in another, if not the exact same stuff. Then it'll have similar class of items, of junk.
Stop!
Yeah, there's really no new moves here. Everybody took a long weekend. I wouldn't be surprised actually if people have just taken the whole weekend off. But yeah, I definitely wish instead that Fallout 3 had just say, do you want the male version of this character or the female version? We have voice acting throughout the entire game as we paid a male and female actor, and that's exactly what Fallout 4 did. Which really, I guess I should have just moved on to playing Fallout 4. And I do kind of intend to do that. Unless I just burn myself out completely on Fallout 3. I intend to make sure I get all the DLC during this winter sale and be set up and well equipped on that. Right, so as far as Shadowverse, for what little I care, I need one more ranked win, which I'll see if I can get off screen. But we otherwise are good. Then we have 4 pieces of news we can talk about. The Game Awards claimed record viewership figures in 2021. It says 85 million live stream views. Okay. I mean, I really have no reason to contest those numbers, particularly since you would have probably said 75 million if you were making up the number higher, or 100 million if you were going to really lie, or you would have gone down to 50 million and said over 50 million if 85 million wasn't that impressive. 85 million views, though, may not actually directly connect to a single sale, and there was a ton of garbage at the Game Awards, a ton of wasted time, ton of trailers that I couldn't tell you anything about any of them because they just became a big blur. I think the Nintendo Direct concepts of talking about fewer games in smaller time frames and sections makes a lot more sense. Video Games Chronicles also says Assassin's Creed's immersive concert has been announced for the franchise's 15th anniversary. So just like a musical concert. 15 years of Assassin's Creed and they still haven't really found a good mark with it. Although in all fairness, they have made probably a lot more money with Assassin's Creed than most series have. But I bet Nintendo and Mario has done a lot better in any 15-year period you pick. A Disney Twisted Wonderland is coming to North America smartphones on January 20th. Which kind of feels like it is, if I was to guess, a mobile phone game trying to do something like Kingdom Hearts while not including the Final Fantasy characters, which in all fairness, even for Kingdom Hearts, I don't know if you needed the Final Fantasy characters ever. It does feel like they've kind of redrawn a lot of the characters from that, and now you have these kind of otome visual novel male characters being redrawn, so it's gonna probably feel a lot like fan fiction compared to people in the West. And then final story for today, Hot Wheels Unleashed sales have topped 1 million, which, I mean, there probably should be more coverage of how well Hot Wheels Unleashed has succeeded so far. We're still just kind of waiting to see if they try to sneak in microtransactions into it, or if they're just going to have the feeling like it has microtransactions in it, and maybe that is still too objectionable for little kids. The Nerf game, on the other hand, that came out this year, failed pretty miserably from what I hear, and I definitely did see it on one of the worst games of the year. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me, there's a bunch of links down below. On my YouTube channel, there's a playlist tab where I have a playlist for every game I cover. I have footage coming out every Monday through Friday of games I actually covered. And then finally, since the winter sale is happening, if you would want to support me even further, you could friend me on Steam and give me a gift card, or give me a game off my wish list, or just give me a game in general. Or there is a Patreon link also down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.